Even though it's made, served, and eaten just like pasta, gnocchi is technically not pasta. Potato is the main ingredient, not flour, so it's really more of a dumpling. Take 2 russet potatoes, rinse them off, poke them once or twice, and then microwave them until they are totally soft all the way through. If you boiled the potatoes, they would soak up too much water. Water is the enemy of gnocchi dough. Water forces you to use more flour to make the dough less sticky, so the dish comes out gummy. You could bake the taters instead, but then you'd need an hour of cook time for step 1 of what could, in totality, be a 20-minute meal. Chef Mike has you in good hands. After you've confirmed that they are totally soft, press the potatoes through a handheld potato ricer onto a floured surface. You can use a food mill instead, but most contemporary cooks don't own food mills. If you've got asbestos hands, I guess you could try grating them on a box grater, but the problem is you need to break this potato down while it's still hot. That lets me reduce the amount of moisture just a little bit more by allowing it to float off the mash in the form of hot steam. My ricer allows me to break down 2 big potatoes in 15 seconds without burning my hands. I hope by now that you trust that when I make these videos, I do consider all of the alternatives. To prove it, I'll even mention that you could use instant potato flakes to make gnocchi and just skip this whole step. But I want to lead you down the path of optimum effort to reward, and I do think that any non-ricer owners who eat mashed potatoes more than once a year should buy one. In the amount of time it took for me to justify this ricer, this mash has cooled off. I can now make a well in the center to add salt, pepper, and 1 whole egg. Whisk the egg into a homogeneous mass and then prepare to add flour. This next part is the only subjective variable, so stick with me and I'll show you what to do. Measure out a cup of all-purpose flour. You probably won't need the whole cup. In fact, your goal is to use as little flour as necessary. You also don't want to mix it too much from this point out, since kneading hydrated flour around makes strong gluten, which toughens your gnocchi. I can't tell you exactly how much flour to use because I don't know the mass and hydration of your potatoes. I acknowledge that I'm presenting this as high stakes due to all the disclaimers, but your margin for error is wider than it sounds, and you're gonna have to try pretty hard to get a result as tough and springy as store-bought gnocchi. Sprinkle most of the flour onto the dough mixture, stir it around, and start to consider whether this shaggy mess is something that you could press and roll into a cohesive shape. This isn't gonna be enough, so I'll add a little more, mix a little more, and by the way I can feel this shaping into a shaggy log, I know that I can stop adding flour. I'll segment the dough into 4 equal parts and use the extra flour to dust the counter. The goal is to roll out 4 logs of the dough, and I like to start by just smushing out a rough cylinder. I then use both hands to roll this into a relatively even log. From here, cut equal-sized pieces. It's traditional to use a wooden tool or a fork to imprint some ridges on one side. You might use this two-handed motion to make more of a cylinder shape than these cuboid pillows, but I will leave the final shape to your preference. If you're not too particular, you can knock out the whole batch in a matter of minutes. I know I might have made it sound complicated, but this is grandma food, rustic and easy to make on a whim. Just roll it out, cut it out into individual pieces, and then set them aside until the rest are done. The one annoying part about this recipe is you will have to wash a surface that's now covered in sticky dough that had raw egg all over it. If you wanted to stop the process now and do that before cooking these guys, just hold them in the fridge with a light dusting of flour so that they don't stick together. Otherwise, if you're ready to fire, get a pot of salted water to a gentle boil and add your gnocchi. You won't need to memorize any cook times for this because each one floats to the top of the water when it's done cooking. Stand by with a spider or a slotted spoon looking for any floaters and stop their cooking by moving them into cold water. With this last one done, they are all cooked and ready to sauce. The cold water bath isn't entirely necessary, but you should use it for your first attempt. It removes the need for you to time everything perfectly. Once you get confident with the rhythm of making gnocchi, you'll be able to simmer the dumplings in one pot while warming the sauce in a separate pan. Marinara is good. There are plenty of gnocchi and cream sauce recipes, but I'm still not tired of brown butter and sage, no matter how often I lean on them every fall and winter. I melt butter in a pan, sprinkle in some non-fat dry milk powder so that you intensify the brown butter flavor, something I've covered half a dozen times by now. Let that get golden brown, add fresh sage, then lay the gnocchi in. The browned milk solids add a ton of flavor, plus a nice looking color without needing to perform a hard sear. I've never been able to do that without the wet, fragile gnocchi sticking or falling apart. Move the finished dish into a warmed pasta plate and finish with Parmesan for height and salinity and flavor and visual intrigue. It might sound silly, but anytime I eat these, what stands out is how they taste like potato. Dried gnocchi would lead you to believe that it should be plainly flavored and firmly hold its shape like dried pasta does, but if you follow these steps, you can make a 20-minute dinner that's pillowy soft and definitively flavored like a russet. The homemade version behaves like a buttery cloud, while the store-bought one resists biting force even if it's boiled for twice as long as recommended. This dish has all of the aspirational romance of homemade pasta, but with no kneading, no resting, no rolling into perfectly even sheets. When you think about gnocchi as a ratio of effort to impressiveness, the levels are high for both, let me just throw something together, and ooh la la, she. I see why it's such a popular menu item. While some may believe that double salt and triple butter are what separate restaurant food from home cooking, it might also be a propensity for reframing peasant food as symbols of luxury. I saw a po' boy on a menu for $20 yesterday. A po' boy. Y'all better keep on cooking. Trade has paid to be mentioned at the end of this video. If you try to make good coffee at home, Trade is the easiest upgrade to your setup. Grocery store beans are stale, and a lot of times I feel like they taste burnt or look super oily. Trade rocks because you get a batch that was roasted right before it got shipped to you, and it comes from small batch roasters here in the USA. I order my precious medium roast whole bean coffee every 10 days so that I can have a high quality pot of joe every morning. Over 435,000 customers have seen how much their coffee improves after switching to Trade. If you'd like to be one of them, you can sign up with confidence knowing that anyone who isn't satisfied with their first coffee will have it replaced for free. Don't settle for coffee that's just okay or just good enough. Head to drinktrade.com/Shaquille to see how good it can be, and you will receive up to 2 bags for free. That's drinktrade.com/Shaquille to get up to 2 bags free with any new subscription. That's drinktrade.com/Shaquille.